You know, what we need now is a Librarian Redemptor Dreadnought. Hello everybody, it's the Warhipster here, coming at you with another review video, and as you might have guessed already, my arm is not so nonchalantly leaning on the brand new Strike Force Agastus. Yes, this brand new, very slimline box. There's loads in here, but it's a very slimline box. It's interesting. Yes, Games Workshop have sent me the brand new Strike Force Agastus box. This is the book that comes inside, but it's just easier to hold on camera. So a massive, massive thank you to Games Workshop for sending me this through. And before we jump into the full build it, paint it, review it, talk about it, Land Raider scale it of the video, I do just have to ask you one question. Hobbyist to hobbyist, man to man, as a human being. Do you think that the Desolation Squad looks a little bit silly? If so, great. I don't need to hear about it. Please, please keep it to yourself. Because I agree with you. I think the Desolation Squad does look a little bit silly. They're a little bit overbalanced. The gun is a little bit too big. You'll see that there's some opportunities for some modeling in here, which are really, really cool for the more experienced converters and builders out there. But I don't want to read the comment section on this video and it just be one long list of the Desolation Squads look silly. I really don't want to hear it, because it's all I've heard for the last few months. You know, you're entitled to your opinion, of course, and you can share whatever you like. You know what? Comment whatever you want. Just be kind to me. Please? It's not my fault. I didn't design it. And it does look a little bit silly. But otherwise, I think it's a really nice box, and I think there's a lot of really cool stuff in here, like the Brutalis dreadnought, which I know you'll agree with me on. So with all of that out of the way, please do like this video, share it, do comment below, unless it's about the Desolation Squad. And if it is about the Desolation Squad, I'll still read it anyway. And do make sure that you subscribe for more content in the future, mostly about painting Strike Force Agastus in the colours of the best Legion, the greatest chapter, the Noble Ninth, the Blood Angels. Alrighty then, Strike Force Agastus. What do you get in the box? Well, you get this lovely little book, which gives you a little bit of narrative background in there. We've got some cool up-close and personal pictures of all the models contained within. Like this. We get a couple of little stories, a little bit of detail. This is nice. You typically find these in those kind of versus boxes, you know, stuff like where you've got Force versus Force, well, faction versus faction type thing, but you get this kind of thing in here, which is a nice little touch for Strike Force Agastus. You of course get a hefty instruction manual, which we'll look in just a little while. You get a big old bag of bases. In there is, I believe, 6 40mm bases and 10 32mm bases, and then you get a huge amount of plastic. So what we get here first is our new Primaris Lieutenant, or multi-part Primaris Lieutenant kit, which comes on those 2 sprues just there. We get our Brutalis dreadnought here, which comes on these 3 sprues, which are 2 half sprues and 1 half sprue altogether, so 3 sprues. You get your Desolators, which come on a mirror match of 2 of the same sprue. So here we go. We have one here like this, and then we get another like that. It's exactly the same sprue. Well, instead of 2 sprues, there's 10 of these in the box. Not 10 of these sprues, 10 Desolators. We have our heavy intercessors just here as well, and this comes on a single 2-part sprue, although we've seen the heavy intercessors before, so that shouldn't be too surprising. We get, if I can just prise it out of the box, we get this piece of artwork, which is pretty cool. Makes the Desolator look awesome. Same thing on the other side. No 2-part artwork here, but that's pretty nice. I'm a big fan of that. Pop that to one side. You get 2 transfer sheets. These are the Ultramarines Infantry transfer sheets. We've seen these ones before. These aren't new. 2017 these transfer sheets came out. And we get our round base, which I believe is a 100mm round base for our dreadnought, as is usual. There's no upscaling here for the Brutalis dreadnought over and above the Redemptor. So there you go, that's everything that you get in the box. So, well, I'm going to clear this out of the way, and then we're going to look inside that instruction manual on a model by model basis. Now we're going to do the Primaris Lieutenant, who's right here at the bottom. We're going to do the Desolators, and we're going to do the Brutalis Dreadnought. We're going to have a good look at those. We're probably not going to look at the Heavy Intercessors because, well, this video doesn't need to be any longer than it already will be. And, well, it's an old kit now, so we don't need to look too closely at it. You guys have seen it. You guys have built it. It's pretty cool. It's a nice looking kit. They're nice looking models. I'm a big fan of the Heavy Intercessors. Those bolt rifles. Don't they look big? That's all that really needs to be said about the Heavy Intercessors. So we'll be looking at all 3 of the new kits within this in just a moment. Okay, so Strike Force Agastus then. Let's have a look inside the instruction manual. It's a 90mm round base, not a 100mm round base. There you go. Redemptors are slightly smaller. I thought they were on 100s. I've done a lot of big models very recently. Anyway, what we have in here is we have the things that I like to see. We've got the base diagram here, which is really, really good to see. We could open up the packet of bases here. As you can see, if you're never sure about what size of base is, you can just pop it on this diagram and it helps you figure it out, which is always nice. As you can see, should cover up the whole thing. There you go, like that. You get the list of everything that's in your box. You can see some of the options. It gives you the key as usual about the build variants and things like that. Use correct bases, etc, etc. So, in order of operations, what do we have? Well, we have the Primaris Lieutenant kit, which we'll get to in just a second. We then have the Heavy Intercessors Squad with all of their options, like that. We have our Brutalis Dreadnought, comes up next. And then we finish things off with the Desolation Squad. Or Desolator Squad. No, it is a Desolation Squad. Yeah, you can build 2 units of 5, or you can build 1 big unit of 10 out of the box. So, we are going to do things in order here, because that makes sense. We're going to build up the Primaris Lieutenant, and then we're going to do... I might build the Heavy Intercessors and do that off screen, because, again, we're not going to be fully reviewing that. And then we're going to do the Brutalis Dreadnought, and then we'll do the Desolators, or Desolation Squad. And, just as an aside for all of you folks out there, before you ask questions, I have a couple of these Blood Angels upgrade sprues. As you can see, as a Blood Angels fan, I have many Blood Angels. This is only half of it. Blood Angels upgrade sprues. So these are of course going to be joining my wonderful Blood Angels collection, because, well, it's been a while since we've done it, so we might as well. And where better to start than with a new character, the Primaris Lieutenant. So here, as you can see, it's fairly what you would expect from a Space Marine kit. What's interesting here, though, within this kit is that, according to the instructions, you've just got these flat parts of the body for the arms. So this is highly customizable. You'll be able to use things like the Blade Guard kit to give him a storm shield. You'll be able to use other things to give him different weapons that he has the options for of the war gear, because the Strike Force Augustus booklet does give us his data sheet. And there he is, as you can see. You also get the rules. So he is equipped with a bolt pistol, mastercrafted bolt rifle, frag grenades and crack grenades. And within this, you have the opportunity to give him mastercrafted auto bolt rifle, mastercrafted bolt rifle, mastercrafted stalker bolt rifle, mastercrafted power axe, mastercrafted power sword, neo-volkite pistol, plasma pistol, or a power fist. You also have the option over here for the storm shield, but apparently that doesn't carry a points cost. The special issue bolt carbine as well is an option here. We have neo-volkite, no, that's already been chosen. Yes, this is all of the Primaris lieutenants in the Mark 10 armor, rather than in the kind of Phobos armor or the Gravis armor. It's just kind of collating all of that together. And there are no changes to this data sheet as far as I can tell. You still get an additional one without taking up an additional battlefield slot. You still get the reroll ones to wound. If it is a Space Wolf, it has the Wolf Guard keyword, and so on and so forth. Storm Shield rules are unchanged. All of these weapons seem to be unchanged as far as I can tell. And the data sheet, his stat line, is unchanged. So, what do we get in the new Primaris Lieutenant model kit? Well, we get 2 sprues, as we've already seen. Here they are. So the options that you have on here are the plasma pistol, the bolt pistol, the bolt rifle with 1, 2, and 3 different magazine options. You have the power sword, the power fist as well. You don't get an axe here, but you do get all of these cool things, which is really awesome. So let's look at these one by one. Starting here. So we have a fairly decent sprue. We have the usual Space Marine suspects in terms of the connection points. We've got nicely done on the torso here and here. However, we do have a connection point on these kind of hip plates. That always seems to happen, so it does just mean you have to be real careful when you're smoothing that down so you don't gouge it out, because you want those to be nice and smooth, because that's often a place where people look weirdly. We have connection points on the joint here, so make sure you don't shave off the whole of the little component. You can see it just there. See that little peg? That will be for his right leg. As you can see, it slots in there like that, which is, you know, that's another kind of point of watch out. The leg plates, we do still have a connection point on the top of the knee, so that one's fine, but we have this one right down by the ankle, which is always the one where people grind it, and it's where you get that kind of mulched bit right at the bottom of the leg. So do just be very careful when you're smoothing that out. We have some paturges, whatever that's called. We have that kind of nicely connected point here on the left hand side and on top of the belt, so nice and easy to smooth down and hide. And same here on the tabard, we've got the connection point on the underside and on the top of the belt buckle. These are obviously optional, and we get this nice little base piece as well. The legs, we've got connection points on the back of one of the legs. Always seems to be the case with Space Marines. One will have it on the back, so do just be very careful for that one. But this one will be fine. As long as you smooth it down in some way, shape or form, you'll be able to get the shin guard on there, no problem. And this leg should be okay, because the other connection point is on the bottom of the foot. Lastly, on this pointed hand, we have a connection point on the finger. So do just be very careful you don't put too much stress on there, because it is one of those points that's likely to snap off if you want a pointing hand. But otherwise, this is a pretty decent sprue. It's just got all the same usual suspects for Space Marines, and I'm curious as to why that will not change. Next up, we have even more of the usual suspects when it comes to Space Marines on sprues. We have connection points on the ball bits of the exhaust ports of the backpack. I don't know why this keeps happening, but it does. It's always the same. So be real careful when you're smoothing that down. It's just going to be one of those things where you just have to make sure that you're just kind of very gently taking a curved motion with your knife to get that nice and smooth. And same with your mold line removers, so you don't gouge it out or make it flat, so it's not a ball joint with this kind of straight line cut out of it. On the power fist, we have our connection point here on the finger, but we also have it here in the armpit, which is nice. Here we have the connection point on our kind of the strap of the bolt rifle. I'm not sure why, but we do. And we have kind of another cyborg hand with holding a plasma pistol. These Primaris Marines are really not very careful with their plasma pistols, are they? We have our two heads here, 1 and 2, and they are both connected at the neck, which is really nice to see. That's really awesome. We have our shoulder pads here. Not that we're going to be using that, I'm sure, because we're going to be using Blood Angel's upgrade sprue bits. We have connection points not on the blade, on the sword, which is really awesome. And we have kind of just the usual suspects that you would expect. Like I said, I've said that a couple of times, but that really is the case when it comes to these Space Marine kits. You always have to watch out for the same points. Usually it's backpacks, legs, and, well, weapons sometimes are a little bit tricky and fiddly. What is nice, though, is that we're only going to have a little bit of mold line work to do on the heads because they are attached to the neck, which is just really, really nice. I'm probably going to go with this unhelmeted option because I really like that head. I think that's really cool. Awesome stuff. Right, I suspect it's now time to build the Primaris Lieutenant. Yeah, I'm just going to go for it. We're just going to have a go. Just going to see what choices await me when it comes to building the new multi-part Primaris Lieutenant. So with our Primaris Lieutenant all built up, I went with the Bearhead plasma pistol and I went with the Paterges down here. I think he looks pretty awesome. We've also got our upgrade sprues, Blood Angel shoulder pad on there, which is really cool. It's an awesome looking model. Big fan of that. Oh, I also went with the Power Fist, obviously. I've got enough guys with swords, so Power Fist felt appropriate. So there we go. Right, next up on the list of things to do is the heavy intercessors. Now, I'm not going to do a full review here, but there is a couple of things to point out about Strike Force Agastus. And that we have a bit of an issue in here is that if you don't know what any of the magazines are, then you don't know what you're building. And because there's no list on the back here, there's no kind of indicator as to what each one is and does. And it's not like they've got the kind of stat lines like halfway through or anything like that. So this is a little bit confusing. However, I'm going to do some detective sleuthing, and well, the booklet here isn't particularly helpful either, because we've just got, this is what they look like: heavy intercessor sergeant, heavy intercessor. Now, as far as I can tell, I'm doing some investigation. We have to look at the lieutenant sprue as well here, just to help us out. So, looking at this sprue, this is a normal bolt rifle. Well, in this case it would be a mastercrafted bolt rifle, but this is a normal bolt rifle with the sickle magazine, I think is what you call that. This is our Stalker bolt rifle, which is where you got that straight mag, and here our assault bolter variant has a drum mag, or almost sort of a half drum mag in a way, like that. It doesn't have a sight on it, that's the main thing, and it's got kind of more bullets in it. Now when we look at the heavy intercessors, it's actually easier to look at it in here. It's not entirely clear which one is which because the design philosophy changes. But this one here, being the drum, I would suggest is probably the Hellstorm bolt rifle. That's fairly simple because that's the one that looks like it has the most amount of bullets in it, and therefore that's the one that fires the most amount of shots. This one here with the slightly longer magazine with the skull on it, I think that, do tell me if I'm wrong at home, but this is the whole point, right? I believe that's the Executor bolt rifle, and I believe this normal one here, this kind of one that looks more like the drum mag on the auto bolt rifle, that is in fact the normal heavy bolt rifle magazine, I believe, but I'm not entirely sure. I think the same thing applies when you come across to the heavy bolter. So I think this is the heavy bolter, this one here, with the kind of, well, similar looking magazine to the normal heavy bolt rifle. I believe this one here is the Stalker bolt rifle, pretty certain. And this one here is the Hellstorm heavy bolter. So there you go. But that's one of the kind of problems with not labeling what these things are in these booklets. So it would be nice to see a label make its way in. Games Workshop, please listen. Anyway, we're not going to look too deep at the sprue, but suffice to say, as mentioned in the Primaris Lieutenant, there's a lot of the kind of same old story with Space Marine kits. You have connection points on the domes on backpacks, and when it comes to the legs and things, it's the same similar thing. You'll have the occasional one that's just on the back of the leg and stuff like that. But what I am going to do is what I would normally do in these situations, and that is do a time lapse on how long the build time is for each one. So you'll be pleased to hear that, I'm sure. It's a cool sprue. Anyway, I shall be back in just a moment on the time lapse. There we have it, one handful of heavy intercessors all built up. Oh, that one's trying to get away. We'll pop them over to one side for now. Looking pretty cool. So that's the troops element all built up. So now we're going to move on to the next part of our Strike Force Agastus journey, and that is going to be this Brutalis dreadnought. This is the heavy intercessors. There we go, the Brutalis dreadnought. So it is a pretty familiar kit. There are some weapon choices here, of course, and there's a couple of extra panels and armor things going on here which make it a little bit different to a Redemptor. Now what I do have is I actually have a spare Redemptor kit here, so we'll look at the sprues side by side at times as well. So this is the Brutalis one. That's why I haven't snapped it off just yet, so I can tell the difference. And we've also got the Redemptor Dreadnought, so we will just compare the two. But looking in the instructions, of course, what we have is we have options for different weapons. So here we have on the chest, that's where we get this option for 2 melter guns or 2 heavy bolters, whereas the Redemptor obviously has storm bolters, or it has the frag storm grenade launchers. I do know my Space Marines. This is where it turns out I'm wrong. Anyway, this is what we have. We have a slightly different front panel for the Dreadnought's sarcophagus here. This is different to what we've got from the Redemptor, I believe, which we will investigate in just a moment to compare the options with each other. Although I do have it on my lap, so I can pretty much answer that question. Nope, we'll do it live together. We do have, as well, in addition, over the next page, so this is the kind of belly of the Redemptor here. These are slightly different front panels, so you can see we've got some crenellations here that you don't have on the Redemptor Dreadnought, but again, I will show you that in just a second. We have the twin iron hail heavy stubber, whatever it is, that goes on the top, so that's a unique option to the Brutalis Dreadnought. And then on the legs, we get some extra armor paneling as well. I believe these are slightly different as well, C29 and C31. They've got that extra little bit of lip that goes under the sarcophagus, where I don't think that the Redemptor has those. Over on the legs, we've got these kind of knee joints, which have got a little bit of an extra lip on them. Again, pretty certain that's a new detail. Yes. We have the extra casings as well that go around the outside. You see them here down in the corner, C50, no, C60 and C51. Those are slightly different as well. So they kind of mask the joint of the hip. And then of course, we have overleaf. We have even more different options. So this is where we have our Brutalis talons, and those are a weapon in and of themselves. You then also have your Brutalis fists, which are over here. And the Brutalis fists come with two auto bolt rifles, or two bolt rifles, or twin bolt rifles attached to them. So there's the fundamental difference between the two weapons. Of course, there are differences within the stat line as well, which we shall examine in just a second. And then finally, we do attach the dreadnought's torso to the dreadnought's legs, and we skip on merrily down the road with a finished dreadnought. Very, very cool. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages of instructions. And if we just take a quick look in the manual for Strike Force Agastus, we just get to the right page. Here we go. So the Brutalis dreadnought, as you can see here, the stat profile is pretty much the same as a Redemptor dreadnought. The only difference here is that we've got an extra attack on the Brutalis dreadnought. But what we do have is twin bolt rifles. That's what it was. Heavy multi-melters, not heavy multi-melters, multi-melters that go in the chest or swap for a heavy bolter. You have the twin Icarus Iron Hail heavy stubber. So I forgot 2 words there. That's of course the different one that's on the top. Heavy 8. That's a lot of shots. I thought there were less. Maybe I don't know my Space Marines as well. What we have is the Brutalis Fist. And the Brutalis Fist is combined with the twin bolt rifles. So you've got 2 twin bolt rifles and 2 Brutalis Fists. And then you have the Brutalis Talons, which has the strike and the sweep profile. They have a very similar strength, AP, and damage on the main hits, although the Talons are -4, but you do get to re-roll the wound roll with this. Or you can do the sweep attack with the Talons, but what you don't get is you don't get the twin bolt rifles. So that's the trade-off there. The Duty Eternal and the Explodes are the same as they are on the Redemptor. So it's a pretty cool little kit. There's lots and lots of cool stuff to be had with the Brutalis Dreadnought. So let's now take a look at the sprues, shall we? We should do that. Absolutely, we should do that. So let us start with this sprue here. So this is one of the Brutalis sprues, and we've got the Icarus, the twin, well, one half of the twin Iron Hail Icarus heavy stubber, and we've got the multi-melter options here as well. Now the closest resembling sprue to this is probably this one from the Redemptor, and as you can see, those are very, very different sprues. So you pop them side by side like that, got completely different components. Similarly, again, if I show you the other two, so this is the Redemptor one with all the guns. I'm just holding those side by side, so that's both Redemptor sprues there. So you've got the plasma and you've got the Gatling here. Whereas when we have this one and pop this one side by side, you can see that there is a big, big difference between those bits. When we combine those two kind of front panels together, as you can see right in the middle there is that difference with those crenellations. We've got a couple of different extra armor options around here. The fists joints look very different. Just trying to find one on the Brutalis. Yeah, so you see you've got things like this, whereas you've got just a single hand there. The Brutalis fist does look fundamentally different to the Redemptor fist, which is very, very cool. Right, let's get the Redemptor out of the way. I'll just give you one last final Redemptor, Brutalis. Screenshot that if you wish to combine. So let's pop you out of the way, and let's pop you out of the way because you are the Redemptor Dreadnought. And let's look at the Brutalis sprues in detail, shall we? So it is a vehicle, so it is all attached to the sprue in a very two-dimensional way. So expect mold lines on the two-dimensional areas. So for example, on this section just here, you should expect to see a little bit of a mold line coming right down the middle of it, just here, along where the kind of the plastic has been pressed out. But all of the panels and stuff should be attached around the outside, because as I say, this has been done in a flat because it's a vehicle, large pieces, flat 2D printing, as it were. We've actually got quite a nice thing here on these back curved bits. Sometimes you would expect maybe to see an attachment to the sprue here on the front. So then you would get a bit of a tricky time trying to clip that out and make sure it's nice and smooth. But that's a nice touch that it's just around the outside. And you would expect that from most components in a vehicle type thing, which you have, for example, around here, around here, around here, around here. You see they're all nicely stationed around the outside. This is one of those front panels on the chest actually, and you can see it curls all the way around like this. So that is different to the Redemptor Dreadnought. That's very, very cool. It's an awesome little sprue, that one. Next up, we have our double sprue here, and well, we're just going to hold on to it for the moment. You see the talons here. These are attached not on the blades, which is really good to see. We should have the fingers around here somewhere as well. Yeah, see, there we've got the fingers like that. Again, this is attached at the tip of the finger, which is really good. Same here, and same here and here. So it's not like on the flat of the outside of the talon, or fist, I should say, which is a big plus in my mind, because it just makes things a lot easier in terms of clipping things out and putting it together and smoothing it all down. Same for all of these talon pieces, as you can see, 110 right there, attached on the outside rather than on the narrow side. It does mean that it's going to be front-facing details, so you will have to be a little bit careful when you're clipping it off, but otherwise, it's a pretty cool sprue altogether. And there's our knee panel, as mentioned. We've got that extra flaring up there, which is different again. So it is sufficiently different enough from a Redemptor Dreadnought for it to be pretty cool kit. I wonder if they will be combined in the future, maybe. I doubt it though, because there are enough different pieces here for this to be slightly different. So, well, there's not much to say. Same things applies for most vehicles that we've reviewed on the channel. As I've mentioned already, it's all in a 2D plane, so you will have mold lines on kind of larger areas like this one just here, on that kind of on the exhaust pipes for the back of the Redemptor, so do just watch out for that. But otherwise, it's a pretty cool sprue. So we're going to jump in and we're going to start building our Brutalis Dreadnought, starting now. So our Dreadnought is now built, and it's a very interesting little kit, this one. There's lots of tiny little details that are different about this to the Redemptor. For example, something I didn't notice was that the shoulders are a lot smaller. We've got, as mentioned, extra crenulations here on the front part. We have the knees. I think the feet are slightly different. So it's a very interesting little kit. And it comes with this really nice little peg right there. So you don't have to fully assemble it. The old one just doesn't have that kind of slot in there, so it can be a little bit less secure. Now if you want it to just kind of rotate all over the place, you can just clip that peg off, and that's what the instructions instruct you to do. But ultimately it's a lot more secure like this, and I think it's absolutely cracking. A lovely Brutalis Dreadnought. I'll dig out my Redemptor in a bit and we'll compare them together on the spinning shot. Right, let's pop this to one side, because now we have the final piece of Strike Force Agastus, and that is of course the Desolation Squad. So I know these aren't popular, but we're going to get through them anyway. I don't mind them, but you know, it is what it is. Please just be kind. We're just thinking about it as a kit for this moment, so what's it like? So looking at it, of course, you can build 2 units of 5, which I suspect is what we're going to do here, rather than one big blob of 10. And we have a number of different weapon options in here. The Sergeant has a slightly different gun, which can be chosen. And you also have these super crack and super frag launchers. So this is actually interesting. So here we've got the example saying Desolation Squad with super crack rocket launchers. So that's the distinction here. Same here, super frag rocket launchers, as you can see. And one thing I'm just going to quickly check. Don't think the dreadnought had the same thing. No, it did not. And neither does the heavy intercessors. So that is one way of doing it, I suppose. It's not bad. Quite like that. Good work on the Desolation Squad there, Games Workshop. Nice little touch that. There we go. These are totally new weapons after all, so we don't really know what they look like. So that's a good thing. Anyway, looking at these, we have, obviously we've got our sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages of instructions in order to get these guys built up. And, well, I mean, it doesn't really warrant too much of a close look here, because it's Space Marines. Most of these Space Marines kind of instructions will all look the same, as much of a muchness. However, we do have something interesting points here of, like, this is what I think is called the Castellan launcher down here. So this is the kind of the Gatling, the rotary bit. And then we have the kind of super crack thing that goes on, just kind of slots on top of it, which is an interesting way of doing it. I think for those of you who like to convert out there, that makes quite a lot of sense, in that what you could do is create some sort of shoulder mounting arm on the backpack or something in order to put the super crack or whatever on the shoulder. So that's really, really cool. You might even be able to just like kind of stick it around the corner on this little piece just here. We'll have a look at that when we come to the building. I'll build them as they are, but yeah, it's very, very cool. So the thing to point out in here, as it's already been denoted, is that the thing that has 4 barrels, that's your super frag, and the thing that has 2 barrels, that's your super crack launcher. So here we go. It's much of muchness, Space Marine instructions. So let's have a quick look at what the Desolation Squad does. So Desolation Squad is a unit of between 1 and 5 models. Well, between 5 and 10 models, I should say. 1 sergeant, 4 marines, and 4 and 9 marines. They're pretty much a normal stat line there. 3+, 3+, strength 4, toughness 4, weapon skill 2, well, wounds 2, attacks 2, leadership 7, save 3+. Bog standard Space Marine right there. They come in your pretty much normal Space Marine Gravis, not Gravis, it's Mark 10 armor. And they are equipped with a Castellan launcher, which is the rotary bit underneath, and we have the super frag rocket launcher, but you can swap it out for the super crack launcher, and I don't believe it costs you any points to choose either of those. Yes, the only points upgrade is the Venger launcher, which is the one that the sergeant can take. So the sergeant can take the Venger launcher, which is a heavy D6, strength 6, -1, damage 2, blast weapon that can target units that are not visible to the bearer. The Castellan launcher is a heavy D3 weapon, strength 4, -1, damage 1, blast weapon. This weapon can target units that are not visible to the bearer. And the super frag rocket launcher, 48-inch range, heavy D3 +3, strength 4, -1, damage 1, blast weapon. But that doesn't shoot out of line of sight. The super crack rocket launcher, which is probably the better one, is a 48 inches range, heavy 1, strength 8, -3, D3 +3 damage weapon, which is pretty nice now that Armor of Contempt is not a thing. You do quite a bit of damage with that. Only the sergeant can replace it with the Venger launcher, but if it does so, it gets targeter optics. The targeter optics do a thing. Yes, each time the bearer makes a ranged attack with a heavy weapon, add 1 to that attack's hit roll. So be able to fire the Venger launcher out of line of sight at weapons, well, ballistic skill 2, which is pretty cool. In the shooting phase, you have a signum. If this unit contains a Desolation Sergeant, you can select 1 model in this unit until the end of the phase. That model has a ballistic skill characteristic of 2+. So you can get 2 of your kind of out of line of sight weapons to hit on 2s. Or you can also get 1 of your super cracks to hit on 2s. So it's all right. It's not too bad. I think they come in at 35 points a model. Yeah, so what's that? 35, 70, 140, 175 points for a unit of 5, which is not bad for a pile of shots. But it's not going to set the world on fire, I don't think. But there's definitely a place for it in some armies, particularly ones that utilize a lot of heavy weapons. Awesome. Right. Let's have a look at them sprues, shall we? So you get 10 32mm bases, and you get 1 and you get 2 of the sprues. And they are, as mentioned previously, exactly the same. It's an identical kit, which you then just kind of build 2 units of 5 out of, or 1 unit of 10. So we only need to look at 1 set of sprues, which we shall do now, because there is no difference. So I'm just going to snap these in 2, so we can look at these one by one. So technically 4 half sprues. Here we go. So these are the kind of main body of the weapons, as you can see. And actually in there, it's quite an elegant little weapon. And once we get that on top, I don't know how kind of over top or over balanced it's going to look, because sometimes the pictures don't do it justice. And I'm going to be very interested to see if it really is as weird as it looks on the photos and on the cameras. But this is a really cool little weapon. This is what I mean by it's actually fairly intact as a weapon. You just put the Castellan launcher on the end there, but it also looks like kind of like a pretty cool rail gun or something, which is really awesome. You can do some really interesting conversion work with these, I'm sure. These are the missile tubes, which then just slot on the top, and in that kind of size they don't look too silly, which is interesting. So again, we're going to have to see once we get the whole of the body on. Otherwise, we've got mostly good attachments, but we do have our classic Space Marine issues in that we've got our backpacks here attached on the kind of the dome sections, which is just, I'm longing for the day when we don't have it on the exhaust pipes, but you know, one day it'll happen, I'm sure. Heads are all attached at the neck, which is really good. We don't seem to have too much in the way of chunky mold lines, as far as I can tell, at least on this sprue, which is cool. And we get a bare-headed option as well, which is a really nice little head, that one. It's a cool little face. For the arm weapons here, we do have attachments on the shoulder, but that's okay because it'll be covered up by pauldrons. And we have an attachment here, which is on the kind of solid part of the hand rather than on the thumb or on the finger, which is, you know, still not ideal, but it's much better than having it on the fingers. So it's a little bit easier to deal with. The pistol arm here is one to be aware of though, because we do have that connection point there on the elbow joint. So you will just want to make sure you get a nice clean cut and you smooth it down very, very gently, and so you don't kind of whack it all, make it all kind of chopped out and flat. Got the drum fed magazines here, which again attached pretty decently on either side of the belts rather than kind of in the joints where there's kind of 2 things meet up like that, which is really cool. So that's a very interesting little sprue. It's a very simple sprue as well. It's pretty elegant in many ways. Then we have the majority of our bodies. In fact, this is mostly bodies. In fact, this is pretty much all bodies. We do have our targeting optics things that go on the back here. So we can just see what's the width on that. I think you might have to, if you were going to do something like a shoulder mount, you might have to trim down sort of about half of it to get it in. But I think it's eminently doable. More talented modelers apply here. So this is pretty basic as well for Space Marines, as you know, we've gone through this. You've got the connection points here on the back of the leg and on the kind of on the sole of the foot. So this one's fine. This one requires a little bit of care and attention so you don't gouge it. We've got the torsos are connected. Always, for some reason, we have connection points on where the leg's going to go, so you will want to smooth that down so you get a nice clean fit. But we did also, on the torsos, we have the connection points where the armpits are going to go, and they're on the edges, which is always nice to see. It's not, for example, here on the gorget, which is always sometimes, when it happens, it's a little bit annoying. Got a couple of different little kind of pistol holsters in here to attach to your guys, which I know a lot of people don't bother with, but I like to do it. Just creates a little bit of visual interest. And we get some of the purity seals and things like that. There's not too many things in terms of like accessories within this kit. It is a Space Marine kit after all.
So there we go. We have all of our shoulder pads here, but of course we're going to be using some Blood Angel shoulder pads to keep the set all unified. So I'm not expecting this to take too long to build, because it is Space Marines and it looks exactly like a Space Marine kit, which is very, very nice. And if anything, it's always nice to have new bodies that are oriented in a slightly different way, because you can combine this with, as they're built, they're not kind of got pegs for the arms to go in on the sides, on the kind of where the armpits go. So these would be compatible with the rest of the Space Marine range, where you can make some slightly different looking Hellblasters or intercessors, for example. But it is a brand new sprue. It's not an intercessor sprue, as it were. You know, these bodies are different, so that's nice. Even if you're just going to buy one set of these or something like that just to put into your arsenal, you can always combine them. And well, I don't see any real issues with trying to get these guys onto any of the other kind of intercessor bases or bodies or whatever. So, you know, I think it's eminently doable. The arms being fully sculpted on does mean kind of making them Gravis might be a little bit tricky, but I think it's, again, for you more talented converters and modelers out there, there's definitely potential within this to make it look brilliant. So I'm going to build up some of the Desolation Squad, and we can finally see what they look like in the flesh. And we're going to do that on our time lapse, starting now.
So there you have it, folks. Strike Force Agastus all built up, and they were primed. And the big question is, was it all painted? First up, we have the Brutalis dreadnought, painted in the colours of the 9th Legion, the Blood Angels, and it looks absolutely stunning in red. I think it looks incredible. Next up, we have 3 of the Desolation Squad. I'm still working on the last 2. Those are going to be the ones that are going to be filmed, funnily enough. The Sergeant and just another bog standard Marine. We have the heavy intercessors here as well. They've been painted as Blood Angels, and I've filmed quite an interesting classic versus contrast video here. Can you tell which one was classic painted? And of course we have the Primaris Lieutenant. I'm really pleased with this one. I'm particularly proud of that tilting shield and that shoulder pad just there. Oh boy. Finally, we have a little group shot of everything that I managed to get completed in time for this video, missing of course those 2 Desolation Marines. They look really cool. Strike Force Agastus has a lot of presence on the tabletop. It looks fantastic, and it's the best as Blood Angels. I'm not going to lie to you guys, it was real nice painting up some Blood Angels for the first time in a very, very long time. I haven't done some Blood Angels for my Blood Angels army in about 2 years. So I really enjoyed myself this last week getting all of this built and painted up. Now, as it stands right now, 2 of the Desolation Marines are unpainted, but that's because I'm filming them for you lucky ducks out there who want to see that video. So, don't worry, it's coming. I'm going to be doing it shortly after I've done this performance. So what do we think of Strike Force Agastus? Well, I think it's a slightly odd collection of miniatures, but I can see what they were going for with it. And I really like it. I think it's a cool little force that you can put together to start off any collection of Space Marines if you wanted to get into a new chapter or start a new project, or indeed grow an existing one. This is quite a good little set with 3 new things to add, although I suspect many of you have already got quite a lot of Primaris Lieutenants. But in some respects, that gives you a really cool looking Sergeant if you didn't want to have yet another Primaris Lieutenant. So speaking of the Primaris Lieutenant, I really like that little multi-part kit. The only thing that's missing from it, or 2 things I should say, are the Neo-Volkite pistol and the Storm Shield, which would make it the full gamut of options for that mark of armour. It would be a little bit unrealistic to include a Phobos Lieutenant in the same kit as well, because fundamentally the armour marks are completely different. I do have my fingers crossed that we are this close to a Gravis Lieutenant. I'm hoping 10th edition will bring that to us. it would just be really cool. Otherwise, I think he's a really cool little kit, and he will add a little bit of flavour to your units and to your army, of course. If you wanted to make him into a captain, you absolutely could. There is that option for the Power Fist and Plasma Pistol Primaris captain, who was a store anniversary exclusive. Well, now you can build him full time. You don't have to have a store anniversary version. You just need to add a cloak. So he's a nice little addition to the Space Marines as a collection. So next up we have the Heavy Intercessors. I mean, they've been around for a while, you know, so they're Space Marines. They're pretty cool. They're pretty dope. I have wanted them for ages, and I just haven't had the time to get hold of them. So I'm glad I've got them now, and my Blood Angels are now once again reinforced with even more troops. It was fun to build them up. I do think that it was missing that indicator as to what the magazines were on all of the weapons, so that's a bit of a miss in terms of Strike Force Agastus as a product. But the Heavy Intercessors, building them was perfectly fine, and I think they've got enough presence and they look pretty cool on the tabletop, especially surrounded by these guys. The Brutalis dreadnought is a fabulous new dreadnought. I have to give it its dues. I think it looks absolutely incredible. It's just different enough to Redemptor that it is very unique, and the way it's posed, it's like kind of a little bit more squat. In fact, just look at this comparison side by side with another Blood Angels dreadnought that I did way long ago, back in the first years of Contrast. As you can see, there's a very different finish in terms of the paint job, but I think the new one looks lethal in a way, more so than the older one does, and I think it's a really cool addition. I've said that twice now. I need to get some better catchphrases. So yes, the Brutalis Dreadnought is definitely a win in my books. I think he's a fantastic looking Dreadnought. And, well, I'm hoping for a third variant now. Possibly one that's a character and a librarian for my Blood Angels. Make it happen, GW. Cheers. Lastly, we of course come to the Desolation Squad. Now, I don't have a strong enough opinion about these to be really mad, but I know a lot of people who are really mad, and well, I just think that there's more important things to do with your energy than get mad about these. I think they look a little bit silly, and that's it. The guns are just a little bit too big, and as you saw in the build portion of this video, when we were looking at that instruction booklet and indeed at the components on the sprue, the tube on top almost just feels like it was added for fun. I really liked the big sight with the Castellan thing, but you could quite easily turn that into a gun. Just shave that little lens off and drill a hole in it, and now you've got like a, I think I said in the video, like a laser gun or something. I think it's a slight miss having those missile tubes on the top, and if you can find a way to reposition them somewhere else, either on the shoulder or on the side maybe, then I think you absolutely should do that and could do that. I think the kit is versatile enough to be able to achieve that. So in some ways, it's a big plus from me in terms of the kit itself. Just the final look of the models is a little bit funny. They just look like they're going to tip over. That's what makes me laugh about them. And yeah, I think they do look a little bit silly, especially when you put them in amongst things like intercessors and stuff. I mean, they blend in, but it's tough to blend in when your missile launcher is that big. So yeah, ultimately, I mean, they're a little bit of a letdown. Let's be clear, because I think Games Workshop's record in the department of designing models is pretty much always on point, and they've been on a serious roll in recent times, as you can tell from all of my reviews, where I'm super ecstatic about them. But these ones feel a little bit flat just because they do look that little bit too silly for me. It's just maybe a step too far for the Space Marines to have a gun that big. Come on. There has to be some function over form. Maybe? Space Marines. So yeah, the Desolation Squad, they're a bit of a miss for me. So how do I feel about Strike Force Agastus as a box? I think the Primaris Lieutenant will be a very popular little model. I think the Brutalis Dreadnought will be a very popular model. I'm not entirely sure why the Heavy Intercessors are here, but they're great. And the Desolation Squad, I know, is a sticking point for a lot of people. And I think just based on that, I had fun putting the box together. And I even had fun painting the Desolation Squad. There actually was a bit where I put one down and it tipped over. And I was just like, haha, that's just sums them up, doesn't it? So yeah, what do I think? Well, let's Land Raider scale it this time, baby. On a scale of 1 to 10, with a Land Raider being the coolest, and how much of a Land Raider this kit is, I'd say the Brutalis goes up there as a 10. The Heavy Intercessors sit there at around about 7. The Primaris Lieutenant, he sits there similarly around about 7. The Desolation Squad, when they're fully built the way they are on the box set, or the box art I should say, they sit at around about a 5. I mean, they're Space Marines, and it's a big gun, but it's a too big gun on a Space Marine. I think maybe the Space Marine itself should have been bigger. So would I recommend buying this box set? I think so. But only if you really love Space Marines and you really want that dreadnought. Or if you're one of those rare flowers out there, and I know you're out there, and I salute you, you really want the Desolation Squad. You guys are awesome. I know I'm focusing on not liking them and the people who don't like them, but if you like them, you're awesome. So yeah, I think it's tough to rate this one. I think we have to go with my gut, and I'm going to say 7 out of 10 on the Land Raider scale. Because I think there's enough in it to push it up, but there's one big miss, and that's the Desolation Squad. And that is the last time I'm going to talk about them in this video. Instead, I'm going to talk about how great it was to paint some Blood Angels again. It was really great, and how much fun I had. I had a lot of fun, and how excited I am to maybe use these guys in the future. Let me know if you would like to see some Blood Angels battle reports, because I'm trying to decide what I'm going to take to the doubles at Warhammer Fest, and I'm starting to think maybe I might take the Blood Angels. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you all very soon for another review video. I am absolutely sure of that. Have a good one, everybody. Happy wargaming. If you enjoyed this video, you love the channel, and you want to support me further like these legends and bosses on the screen before you, you can do so. Head to patreon.com/warhipster or head to ko-fi.com/warhipster. Alternatively, you could become a YouTube member by heading to the channel page and clicking on the join button just here, just like these amazing, wonderful people have done. And if you really like this video or you just want to shoot me some support, you can click on the thanks button just below this video. Don't forget to share it, like it, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And to make sure you stay up to date, don't forget to click the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Happy wargaming.